I drew this car when I was 14, and now 5 years later, I'm going to be redrawing it and walking you through everything I did wrong back then and how I'm correcting it on this piece so that you can hopefully take away some things to use on your drawings as well. And if you're new here, my name is Tom, and I spent thousands of hours creating hundreds of realistic drawings of pretty much anything you can think of. So I was actually able to dig out the original reference photo that I used for this drawing, and you can kind of see there's definitely some things that need some work. So the very first mistake I made on this drawing has nothing to do with the drawing itself. It's actually the paper that I drew it onto. You see, for this I use sketching paper, which has a very rough texture to it, which makes it almost impossible to get smooth pencil work. So for this drawing, I'm using Strathmore Bristol board, which is A, a lot thicker, and B, a heck of a lot smoother. So the next most obvious mistake on this piece is the proportions. I mean, the back wheel is literally bigger than the front one, and the entire front of the car is actually way too narrow, and there are obviously a lot of other things as well. And the way that I'm fixing it on this drawing is I'm using the grid method in order to get my sketch, and this is where I'm putting a grid onto my reference photo and then the exact same grid onto my piece of paper, and then I'm using those boxes to be like, okay, so on this box on my reference photo you've got this part of the car, and then just drawing that exact same part of the car in that corresponding box on my piece of paper. And what this is basically doing is it's allowing me to use those grid lines as reference points to really accurately gauge where everything needs to go to ensure that my sketch is as accurate to that reference photo as possible before I go in with any kind of color. So it took me about an hour and a half to do all the grids and the sketch, which is probably just as long as I spent on that older drawing, but hey, we now have a very accurate sketch. So I could then go in and erase a lot of the grid lines, but I'm leaving the ones closest to the subject so I can still use that gridded up reference photo to gauge where shadows and tones need to go during the coloring in process a bit later. But one thing I didn't do on this older drawing is I didn't come in with a kneadable eraser before I went in with the colored pencils. And if you do look a bit closer at this piece, you can see all those messy, sketchy lines just flicking off around the outline and also through the pigment layer. But by going over this new sketch with a kneadable eraser, I'm able to remove all of that excess graphite, all those sketchy lines, and leave me with a really nice clean outline that's a lot easier to color in and won't show through in the final result. Right, so it's now time to start coloring it in, and the first stage of my coloring in process is something that I wasn't even aware that was possible to do when I was 14, and it's doing a base layer using alcohol markers. Now, because markers are obviously ink, you can put them down and then you can put colored pencils on top, and because those pencils are going on top of an already colored surface instead of a white one, they're going to look a lot more vibrant. Now, the exact markers that I'm using for this are called Ohuhu Honolulu markers, and I'm just going in and jotting in the most obvious tones and colors that I can see to really get a nice blueprint of where everything needs to go. So it does make those colored pencils a bit later a lot easier because I obviously know where everything needs to go. And I really want to stress here that I'm not being overly neat. I am making sure to stay within the lines, but in terms of blending, I'm not really doing a lot because I can really focus on creating really smooth blends when it comes to doing the colored pencil work. Right, so time to come in with the colored pencils, and the exact ones that I'm using on this new drawing are called Caran d'Ache Luminous pencils. And if I'm being honest, I think just one of these pencils is probably more expensive than the entire set of colored pencils that I used on that older drawing. Now, the very first mistake that I made on this older drawing is the fact that I didn't actually press hard enough with the pencils. You can see here that the pigment layer is actually very wishy-washy. You've still got all those white grains showing through. Over here on this newer drawing, I'm working in lots and lots of layers where I'm gradually increasing the pressure that I'm applying to the pencil as I become happier and happier that what I've got down is in keeping with what is on the reference photo until I reach a point where I have blemished the paper. And blemishing is basically the point where you can't put any more pigment down because all the tooth of the paper is completely filled with pigment, so there's basically nothing for any new pigment to grip onto. And this is actually something you want to achieve in order to get the really solid results that you're going to be after when drawing realistic cars. Now, the next mistake I made on that older drawing was the fact that my pencil strokes weren't going in any particular direction. They were just going everywhere and anywhere, and it was really messing up that 3D look. So what I'm doing on this newer drawing is I'm ensuring my pencil strokes are following the curvature of the individual panels of the car. And what this is doing is it's really helping to give the car that 3D look, because obviously if your pencil strokes are all curvy, then obviously the car will look curvy as well. Now, the last mistake that I made on that older drawing was the fact that I missed out so many details, and this is partly due to the fact that my sketch was all wonky. So there were certain places where I actually couldn't add in any more of the stickers or livery or topography, whatever you want to call it, because everything was just so out of place and crammed together. However, here, because we've been able to get a really accurate sketch, I've obviously been able to add in all of those stickers, and just having all of that extra detail just increases the complexity of the piece and makes it look just that bit more interesting. And the very last thing that I missed out on that older drawing was a shadow, and adding it on this new one really helped to ground it on the page. here you go, my drawing of the Ford GT when I was 14 versus when I was 19. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, and I'll see you in the next one, which I'll put on screen right over here.